Good afternoon, my conscious co-creators. Welcome to another edition of the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. I am very, very pleased you are all here with me today. Yes, if you can hear my voice, I'm still a little bit under the weather, having found out that I had COVID last week. Oof. Not fun. And my apologies to anyone I came in contact with who may have gotten it. Unfortunately, these days it's a reality, though. Thankfully, it's been just a little bit, like a chest cold that just keeps lingering. So hopefully we can knock it out soon. Anyway, today is another one of those shows. It's just you and me. Last week it was an unplanned me only show. This week it's a planned me only show. I usually take the first show of the month for just you and me to have a conversation around different topics. And I have a topic this week that is something that kind of came up in conversation with my wife recently and around stuff that's just happened. Um, and I think it's one a lot of people will relate to, and we'll get to that in a moment. But first, of course, we have our blog post from a couple of years ago, and in some ways, actually relevant to the topic for today, which I chose before I realized this was the blog post. So today's blog post is entitled, excuse me, "To answer violence, we must first find peace in our own heart." We have all heard the saying, hurt people hurt people. The cycle of violence continues until we decide to break it. Yet there continues to be more violence in the world. When we are a peaceful person, it can be heartbreaking to see the violence in the world today. It can be confusing, frustrating, or just plain depressing. Seeing the violence in the world can make it hard to see things from a higher perspective, to see the causes and the potential answers to it. For we get caught up in our own pain, even when it does not involve us. And it still hurts to hear when someone else is a victim of violence. Violence never brings us closer to peace and freedom. It only pushes us to more violence, to more pain, until we lash out at the people who have lashed out at us. Our humanity suffers when there is violence in the world. Understanding and compassion are its first victims. How can we find compassion when there is so much pain from a violent act? It can feel overwhelming and hopeless. Yet this is the time when we need hope most of all. We need to know that there is a way forward, a way to find healing, to find a release from the sadness and pain we feel. And that takes time and distance from the act. For the earth still turns and life continues. So must we. We must find a way to rise up and spread the compassion that is so lacking in the world. It must start with us, finding peace in our own hearts first before we do anything else. For we are the ones who can see clearly while others are blinded with rage. To ask them to find compassion is almost impossible while they are grieving and in pain. The people who are outside of the devastation must be the peacemakers. Even when our hearts are heavy, we can still find a way through, a way that leads us to a better world, where we can find peace after the pain, hope after the grief, compassion after the tears. The person who commits an act of violence did not do so in a vacuum. There are always justifications. We might not think they are valid, but those who were suffering before, they surely are. For ultimately, to solve the issue of violence, we must address the cause, not the symptom. To create a world where violence would never be considered, that will take time and extreme effort. Yet it is possible. Perhaps not tomorrow or the next day, but we can start moving in that direction today. So one day we can find ourselves there in the Garden of Eden we all desire. Wouldn't that be worth it? So, um, this blog post I wrote a couple of years ago, which, if we're paying attention to the calendar, was when the attacks happened in Israel from Hamas. And that violence has unfortunately led to so much more violence since then. And I remember at the time when I heard about the attack on the Nova Conference festival in Israel in the desert, how painful it was to hear about it, because I know that the people at that festival were probably the ones who wanted peace with our neighbors more than anyone else in Israel. Yet they were the first victims of the violence. And since then, there has only been more violence in the world. Violence in Ukraine, violence here in the United States. People are so in pain. They are hurting so badly, and nobody is paying attention to them. Nobody is paying attention to the pandemic of pain and trauma and sadness and depression that is going around this world. And it can only be ignored for so long before someone lashes out. And then we're left with the devastation. We're left with the grief, with the loss. We're left with one group of people being even angrier now for the other group having lashed out. So they lash out. And then the other side has even more justification, and then they lash back out. And then this endless cycle of lashing out just continues until we just completely destroy ourselves. Violence is never the answer. Never. It's not the answer because it only leads to more violence. I'm not saying you don't defend yourself. I'm not saying if someone's trying to kill you, you don't try to stop them. Of course you do. We all want to live. But to attack someone who's not attacking you, to kill someone who's not killing you, to hurt someone who's not hurting you, we can always find all kinds of justifications, but they all ring hollow. There used to be a gentleman who did a number of shows on the network, Larry Sharp, and he ran for governor of New York State several years ago on the Libertarian ticket. And I remember when he was on his show and he was talking about the issue of gun violence. And he made a really profound point that has stuck with me ever since then. And it's probably been, I guess, about 7 years since then. And he said, happy people don't kill people. He said, look, if someone's unhappy, if they don't have a gun, they'll use a knife, a brick, a pipe, a hammer. They'll use whatever they can get their hands on, which is true. Just don't have to make it easier for them. But he said the real cause is people are not happy. That's where the violence comes from. That's what we need to focus on. That's the root cause. And I think he's more right today than he ever has before. There is a pandemic of unhappiness in the world. There is a pandemic of sadness. There is a pandemic of pain and anguish and trauma and grief. And we're not really paying attention to it as a society. There are individual people, individual groups. My wife is a trauma therapist. I do healing work. We pay attention to it. But as a society, as a country, as a world, we're not really paying attention to this epidemic of pain and suffering. And as I mentioned on my recent trip to China, it was something my wife said that relates to us, I think, tremendously. And in China, it's kind of a unique situation. It's very homogeneous. There are not, a lot of foreigners living in China. And economically, they've done well for themselves over the last 20 years. And my wife, having grown up in China when it was still a poor country, she remembers what it was like. And she made the comment about how people are so much nicer in China now. How now that they're not struggling for food, for their day-to-day subsistence, how people there basically have a decent life. Not everybody, but most people in the cities have a decent life. So now they're nicer to their friends, their clients, their customers, their families. And isn't that interesting? When we don't have to struggle to survive, we can actually be kinder to our fellow human being. And is that not a lesson for the world? Is that not a lesson that can help us to counteract all the violence in the world? All anybody wants is a decent life. All anybody wants is food on the table, clothes on their back, shelter, an opportunity to improve themselves. And look, are there extreme cases and are there always outliers? Absolutely. But the vast majority of people in this world, that's all they're looking for. But as long as there are people in pain, as long as there are people suffering, as long as there are people who don't have health care, food, clothing, shelter, there's always going to be some kind of violence. So what does it take to counteract this violence in the world? Well, as Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. To quell the flood of violence, we have to find peace in our own hearts. We have to find a way to get past the violence ourselves, even if we weren't involved with it, even if we think it's wrong, as long as we hold on to, oh, that person was wrong, they shouldn't have done that, we need revenge. A peaceful heart doesn't need revenge. A peaceful heart doesn't seek out to hurt another human being. And although we can't change another person, although we can't make somebody else less violent, we can affect other people by our own energy and how we show up in the world. And when we show up in a more peaceful way, people respond to us more peacefully. And then maybe they'll be a little more peaceful in their life and the people they come in contact with. So this is not a great immediate way of stopping violence in the world overnight. But if we can create a movement, if we can create a practice, if we can encourage others to find more peace in their heart, maybe one day, far in the future, long after I'm no longer on this planet, maybe, just maybe, we might be able to find a bit more peace in this world. So that is my blog post for this week. It is entitled "To Answer Violence, We Must First Find Peace in Our Own Heart." And if you like that, of course, you can find more blog posts on my personally branded website, theconsciousconsultant.com. And of course, on the station's website, talkradio.nyc/blog. And if you really like it, I do have a book that has all kinds of things like this in it called Everyday Awakening, which you can find at all major booksellers. So please feel free to check it out. And it might be even a nice gift for someone you know. All right. So this week, it's just you and me. And when we come back from this break, we're going to start talking about our topic of how to feel safe in an unsafe world. So everyone, please stay tuned. You are listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. We do this every Thursday, 12 noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on talkradio.nyc and all over social media. And we'll be right back in just a moment.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a purpose-driven individual looking for deeper healing, clarity, and growth? welcome to the Expansion Room, a transformative space for purpose-driven individuals. I'm Siobhan Larice, host, licensed therapist, and coach. Join me every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
And welcome back to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. Thank you for joining me today. It's just me and you, no guests today. So I hope you will join me in the conversation, comment on the live streams, let me know how you feel about today's topic, which is how to feel safe in an unsafe world. And so first I want to talk about why it's important to feel safe in an unsafe world. Because some people may be like, oh, why do I need to feel safe? I need to be on guard. I don't need to feel safe. And I would say that everything comes from safety. That feeling safe is so essential to our well-being that we can't afford not to feel safe. And the reason why this came up was because of something that happened recently, and some choices I made that I realized afterwards in talking with my wife about it came from a feeling of unsafety. And it's interesting when we look at it, how so much of our choices, our decisions, happen on such an unconscious level. And how safe we feel or don't feel really influences the choices that we make. And I hope that you can reflect upon your own life and perhaps see if there are choices and decisions that you have made that you made because you weren't feeling safe, and how you might have made different choices had you felt safer in the moment. And this was kind of highlighted to me at a ceremony a few months ago when one of my teachers was talking about the legend of Camelot and King Arthur, and um, how idealistic he was and unrealistic he was. And it really struck a chord in me because many people throughout my life have always said I'm very idealistic. I'm not very realistic. And it really hit me how many choices throughout my life I have made that didn't really serve me because I didn't see the reality of the moment. I didn't see the reality of the situation. And I was seeing things better than what they were. And I didn't want to admit that things could go wrong, that people weren't as nice, that people were only looking out for their own best interests, not mine, and all kinds of things like that. And over the decades that I've lived, it may not sound like a big deal, but there are investments I've made that I completely lost everything. There are projects I got involved with where I trusted, people involved, and I lost everything because I trusted them. I cannot, there's been so many choices and decisions that I've made that have hurt me, that I have lost because I was making my choice not from a place of presence, but from a place of denial, from a place of disassociation, from a place of not truly being connected with myself and with the reality of the situation, the reality of life around me. And even though, I had seen this months ago, still, it's so pervasive. It's so unconscious that even last week I made decisions that weren't necessarily the best decisions because I was sort of denying the situation around the fact that I had COVID. No, I don't have COVID. I just got a chest cold. It's just a chest cold. Because if I admitted to myself that this is COVID, then we would have had to have canceled our plans for last weekend, which would have meant not going up and doing this ceremony up in New Hampshire at this beautiful cabin by the lake, seeing people I really love, and it never would have happened. I would have had to have canceled it, and we possibly would have rescheduled it for later this month, or maybe not until springtime. And I really wanted to go for me. I wanted to go because there's nothing I love more than facilitating these ceremonies and being in service and connecting with people in that way that we do when we're in ceremony. And as a result, because I didn't want to deny it, I kept saying it's just a chest cold. My wife believed me, it's just a chest cold. And got up there, I felt worse throughout the weekend. I kept coughing. My wife eventually got, sick. We came back, went to urgent care, got tested. Sure enough, we both had COVID. And sure enough, one of the people at the weekend got COVID as well. And I was devastated when I heard that because I do these ceremonies to help people to heal, to support people. The last thing I ever really wanted was to hurt someone in any way at all. And me and my wife had a long talk about it. And, I realized that, it wasn't about, worrying about disappointing people if we had canceled it. It wasn't about even the money. It wasn't about any of that. It was just because I wanted to feel good. Because when I do this work, I feel the best I feel. And I just wanted to feel better because I was feeling unsafe in this world with everything going on with the political situation, with wars around the globe, with the environment getting more and more extreme, And people don't seem to really be waking up to the fact that we have to do something about climate change. It's not going away, it's only getting worse. That if we don't do something severe, like we really, 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 as a society, need to focus and tackle on this problem, or we're basically just going to change the environment so much that it's going to be so hostile to life as we know it, that humanity is going to have a hard time surviving. And so there are all these things running around inside my head that cause me to feel unsafe in this world more than I have ever felt in the past. And so that's why this week's topic is how to feel safe in an unsafe world, because I need to feel safe in this unsafe world. Okay, so let's talk about how do we change things around once we recognize that we do feel unsafe in this world. What can we do to cultivate safety? And so we'll get into that in just a moment. So please stay tuned. You are listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, and we will be right back after these messages.
Misalignment within your sales team or with a client stalls deals and creates unnecessary friction for you and the client, resulting in up to 37% lower win rate. If you're in pre-sales, sales management, or sales enablement, and you'd like to increase revenues, win rate, margins, client satisfaction, and stay competitive, this show is for you. Hi, I'm Art Fromm, host of the Making Seamless Sales Show. Please join me live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Linda Marcanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
And welcome back to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity. We're talking this hour about how to feel safe in an unsafe world. And as I mentioned in the last segment, the reason why we want to feel safe, even if it is an unsafe world, is because we make better choices for ourselves and for others when we have that internal sense of safety. So, how do we actually help ourselves to feel more safe? So there are a few things. And first and foremost, and this is, one of the things that my wife really focuses on with her somatic therapy, is to first be grounded in our bodies. And being grounded means connecting to the ground, feeling our feet on the floor, noticing the weight of our body in our chair, and just taking some slow, intentional breaths. And when we do that, it helps to bring us back into presence. And when we can focus on being in the present moment, normally in the present moment, we are safe. Everything is okay. I used to teach a spoon bending workshop with a friend of mine, Jackie. And Jackie used to tell this story of how she was like driving along, rushing to get somewhere. And I think it was wintertime, it was snowing, she hit an ice patch, and her SUV started to spin until eventually she like hit a guardrail or hit a tree or something, and then boom, it stopped. And she was about to really freak out, because she had to get to this meeting, all this stuff and all these things. And because of her practice, she had like stopped for a moment, took a breath, and she said to herself, wait a minute, is everything okay in this moment? I'm all right. The best I can tell, I'm not hurt. I didn't hit anyone. Nobody else is hurt. In this present moment, everything is okay. And she brought herself back to presence. And by bringing herself back to presence, and the fact that in that moment after the spin out, she was actually safe, that then she could be clear and she could start making the phone calls she needed to make, calling emergency road service, calling the people she was supposed to meet, handling all the things, because it was going to take her a while now. And so that practice of coming back to this present moment, even when we've just experienced something that was traumatic or jarring, that we can find safety in this present moment, if from nothing else, through our breath. It sounds simple, it sounds trite, it sounds obvious, but how often do we actually practice it? So first and foremost, to feel safe, even when the world doesn't feel safe, we have to ground ourselves in presence. And we ground ourselves in presence through our breath. Another way that we can help ourselves to feel safe in an unsafe world, and this is one that I practice, but I practice mindfully, is setting boundaries around the information we absorb. Now, keep in mind, I am not saying to stick our head in the ground and ignore what's going on in the world. That's not what I'm saying. But being more mindful and purposeful in the information we take in. In other words, not watching the news cycle for an hour, seeing the same things, violent acts being repeated over and over again, but limit, not completely cut out, but limit how much information we're taking in about what's going on in the world, so that we're informed, but we're not drowning in it. And, it's so funny. I learned this so many years ago, back when I used to teach, I used to hold a law of attraction meetup group. And we talk about, keeping our vibration high. And I asked the audience, what tricks, what tools do you use to help to keep your state, up and positive? And this one young guy raises his hand and he goes, I started doing day trading 6 months ago. And he goes, when I first started, I did really well and I made a bunch of money the first couple of months. And he says, but then I started losing trades. I started losing money and I couldn't understand why. And he said, and I was doing the same things. I was paying attention to CNBC and all the financial news as I was trading. So I knew what was going on. And he goes, well, after I, learned about law of attraction, he goes, I went to my cable remote and I went to the parental controls and I blocked out all the news channels so that I couldn't watch them while I was day trading. And he goes, once I did that, within a month, I was making money again. And he goes, I've been making money ever since. Now, look, this is not about making money. I want to be clear. I'm just using this as an example that when he limited his exposure to all this negative news, he was able to make better logical decisions about his trades and was able to make more money. He wasn't emotional about things. Now, look, I'm not saying you need to block out completely the news channels, but maybe you want to limit and really just take in the news in small doses. I mean, for me, I don't watch the news. I subscribe to a couple of like newsletters that give me a summary of the important things that are going on. I read the headlines. I read the little paragraph, 5 minutes. Okay, I know what's going on. I'm good. That's it. And then I'm off and I'm doing the regular things that I do during my day, connecting with people, talking, working on stuff. So I'm not saying we completely cut out our exposure to what's going on in the world. But what I am saying is we limit it into a digestible form that doesn't overwhelm us. Now, look, do I still get overwhelmed by the news? Absolutely. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it definitely helps the less I pay attention to the news. And I wonder if that's why, monks who meditate all day long in the forests and the caves and the jungles, if because they're not connected to society at all, they can go deeper and deeper in their practice because they're not distracted by the world. So that's another practice we can do to help us to feel safe in an unsafe world. And another thing that I know my wife uses a lot in her therapeutic practice, and she calls it resourcing. She like helps her clients to find a safe space as a resource. And that's basically just visualizing, that's creating an image in our minds of a place when we did feel safe. Maybe it was a place you went on vacation, like Hawaii, or maybe it's just, hiking up a mountain or by the beach or a lake or the desert or whatever it is for you. And sort of painting the picture, close your eyes and paint the picture of that safe space. Where are you? What's the temperature like? What colors do you see around you? What's the feeling of it? Can you feel the temperature of the air on your skin? Really get in all the juicy details and really anchor that in. And when we close our eyes and we bring up that image, it helps to recenter us and reground us and help us to be present and connect to that feeling of safety even when perhaps the outside world doesn't feel so safe. Because safety is an internal thing. Yes, we can be in unsafe situations, but our challenge is when we're no longer in that situation and we still feel unsafe, what do we do? And so by finding that internal place inside of us that feels safe, we can reconnect to safety. We can feel what it feels like to be safe again. For me, I mean, I probably have several places I feel safe, but it's either on top of a mountain overlooking a beautiful vista or in a tropical island, hearing the waves of the beach, feeling the warm sand under my feet, seeing the palm trees and the blue water. Those are my safe spaces. What are yours? All right, so why don't you think about that? Cultivate a safe space inside of yourself while we go to our next break. And when we come back, we'll finish this up with the last couple of bit of practices to help us to feel safe in an unsafe world. And if you're listening live, I would love to hear from you. You know, what do you do to feel safe in an unsafe world? All right, you're listening to the Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, and we'll be right back to finish it all up with our last segment in just a moment.
On Frank About Health, we're not just talking healthcare. We're managing disruption and innovation. Over the last 4 years, I've taken you from epilepsy and COVID to mental health, caregiving, and now the front lines of healthcare transformation. Stay tuned for a healthier future as we bring on the innovators, professionals, storytellers, and advocates who show you how to own your healthcare every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
Ready to serve up success with a splash? Hi, I'm Bruce Kramer, a.k.a. the Corporate Cockroach.
I'm the Renaissance woman, Angie Snowball.
And I'm your strategy doctor, Dr. Mel Desange, inviting you to serving up success with a splash.
Join us as we shake things up with real talk and real strategies centered around awareness, action, and accountability.
And yes, there really is a cocktail involved. Please join us and sip your way to success.
Serving up success with a splash, where wisdom meets happy hours. Cheers!
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 You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
All right, so we're talking about how to feel safe in an unsafe world. And I've talked about a couple of practices already. First, grounding in the present moment, ground your body, feel the floor, feel, yourself sitting, use your breath to come back into presence. Set boundaries with unsafe information. And be able to create this inner resource, an inner mental resource of what a safe space looks like for you. Those are all kind of very internal practices. Now one external one, which for me is one of my favorite and one of the most important ones, which is connecting with community. Finding the people you feel safe with, the community of people that you love to be around and they love to be around you, who you feel safe in their presence, and just connect with them. reach out, whether it's friends or family or a hobby group or a spiritual group, whatever group of people you feel most connected to, just being with them can create a sense of safety. And this is one that I feel is the most visceral because it involves more than just ourselves. It involves others. And when there are other people involved, for me personally, it makes the whole experience more tangible, more real, more, I don't know, grounded, I guess, because you can touch them, you can ask for a hug, you can give a hug, you can hold a hand, you can talk to them. You're not just in your own internal world. So for me, one of the biggest practices for safety is being with my safe community. Can't always happen right away. Can't always happen when we want, but absolutely can happen. And the last practice that I feel is really important to feel safe in an unsafe world, and that's learning to be more compassionate with ourselves rather than judge ourselves. Just acknowledging that we feel unsafe and saying it's okay that you feel unsafe. It's okay that you don't feel good in the moment. Like just showing ourselves some compassion and some gentleness, that it's okay not to feel good. It helps to lighten things up. That acceptance, it's like opening a pressure valve almost, and it lets off the steam so that we can just collapse a little bit. And I think that more and more of us feel unsafe and nobody's talking about it, nobody's mentioning it. And if we can be brave enough to be the first ones to say, you know what, I don't feel safe in the world today, maybe you might find other people feel the same way. But to be able to vocalize that, be able to say it, it's making it okay that we don't feel safe. Having that compassion for ourselves, that acknowledgement of how we're truly feeling in the moment, it all begins there. And once we can admit it to ourselves and have some compassion around it for ourselves, then it can become easier to share it with others, to share it with our community. And you just never know what kind of response you might get from that. So those are my tips for how to feel safe in an unsafe world. I'd love to hear from you if you're listening to this. What do you do to feel safe when you feel unsafe? What do you do to shift your presence of mind, your practice? And have you noticed what happens when you make choices and decisions when you're not feeling safe? And maybe the biggest thing we can do for ourselves is when we notice that we're not feeling safe and we need to make a decision to maybe put it off, give ourselves a little time and space and say, you know what? Acknowledge it. Say, I don't feel safe in the moment. I don't think I should make a decision right now about this or that. Let me wait until I can be more present, more grounded, and I can feel more safe within my own body. So that's our show for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I don't usually do 2 shows in a row. That's just me without a guest. Last week, they just didn't show up. This week, it was planned. Next week, I do have a guest. They're confirmed, so you do not have to listen to me all hour long for next week's show. So I hope you will join me for that one. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining us. Without you, there is no show. So I really do appreciate each and every one of you who downloads, listens to the podcast, listens to the live streams, even after the fact. And of course, if you did miss any part of today's show, you can always catch the replay on talkradio.nyc. And don't forget, we do have other wonderful shows on the network. A couple of people on hiatus right now. So the next live show today will be at 7 p.m. with Art Fromm and his show Making Seamless Sales. Tomorrow, Tommy DeMisa and his show Philanthropy and Focus. And come next Tuesday, Dr. Mira and her show The Hard Skills. So thank you all for tuning in. Take care. We will talk to you all next week.